The bullet left Sergeant Kira Wolf's rifle at 2,800 feet per second. Through her scope, she watched it travel across the Afghan desert, cutting through air so hot it shimmered like water. 1,600 meters, just over a mile, the kind of distance that separated the possible from the impossible. The wind kicked up sand devils between her position and the target. Her spotter's voice crackled in her ear, rough with decades of cigarettes and combat. Winds shifting ghost. 3.2 meters per second variable gusts. Heat shimmers playing hell with the image. Kira Wolf was 23 years old. She'd been a SEAL for 2 years. She'd made shots that instructors said couldn't be made. But this one was different. Below her position, 8 Army Rangers were pinned down in a dried riverbed. Taliban fighters were closing in from 3 sides. The math was simple and brutal. Without intervention, those Rangers had maybe 4 minutes before they were overrun. The Taliban commander orchestrating the assault stood on a ridge 1,600 meters away, directing his fighters with hand signals. He thought he was safe. He thought distance was armor. He was wrong. Kira's finger rested on the trigger. Her breathing slowed. 1 breath. 2. The world narrowed to a circle of glass and crosshairs. She squeezed. The SR-25 kicked against her shoulder. The sound rolled across the desert like thunder. For 1 eternal second, nothing happened. Then through the scope, she saw the Taliban commander's head snap backward. He dropped. His fighters scattered confused. The Rangers seized the moment, broke from cover, started moving toward extraction. 8 lives saved, 8 Americans going home. Then Kira saw the interpreter. He'd been kneeling beside the Taliban commander translating radio traffic. He was 26 years old, according to his file. He'd worked with American forces for 3 years. He had a wife and 2 daughters in Kabul. The ricocheting fragment from Kira's bullet had caught him in the throat. He fell slowly, almost gently, like a man lying down to sleep. "Target down," Kira whispered into her comm. Her voice was steady. Her soul was screaming. 8 Rangers secured. One civilian casualty. Silence on the radio. Then Master Sergeant Thaddeus Brennan's voice, careful and quiet. "Copy that, Ghost. You saved 8. The interpreter, that wasn't on you." But it was. Kira knew it was. She'd pulled the trigger. She'd calculated the angles. She'd made the choice. War makes you choose, her training instructor had told her once. Sometimes you choose who lives. Sometimes you choose who dies. And sometimes you don't get to choose at all. The Rangers made it to extraction. The mission was logged as a success. Kira received a commendation for exceptional marksmanship under combat conditions. She never told anyone that she saw the interpreter's face every time she closed her eyes. That was 4 years ago, Thursday. Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Present day. The morning sun hadn't cleared the trees yet when Kira Wolf walked into the administrative building. She was 27 now. 4 years older. 100 years harder. The folder in her hand was marked with classification stamps that made most officers' security clearances look like library cards. Inside were orders signed by an admiral whose name appeared on documents most people would never see. Master Sergeant Thaddeus Brennan was waiting in the briefing room. At 62, he still looked like he could run 20 miles with a full pack and then fight whoever was waiting at the end. His hair had gone silver, but his eyes were the same hard gray they'd been when he'd talked a terrified 23-year-old SEAL through the worst moment of her life. "Coffee," he offered. Kira took the mug without sitting down. The coffee was black and strong enough to strip paint. "Standard military issue." "You read the file?" she asked. Hawk nodded. That's what everyone called him. Thaddeus was a mouthful. Master Sergeant Brennan was too formal for a man who'd saved your life more times than you could count. Hawk fit, sharp-eyed, patient, deadly when he needed to be. "3rd Scout Sniper Platoon," he said. His voice was quiet. "Syria 2018, 3 SEALs KYA due to faulty intelligence assessment." Kira opened the folder. 3 faces stared up at her from 8 by 10 photographs. Young men, professionals, dead because someone hadn't done their job. The 3rd photograph made Hawk's jaw tighten. Staff Sergeant Isaac Brennan, killed in action Syria, November 2018, age 34. "Your brother," Kira said softly. Hawk took the photograph. His fingers were steady, but Kira had known him long enough to see the tension in his shoulders. "Baby brother," he said, "followed me into every war since Desert Storm. Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan. Told him to stay stateside, train the next generation. He said that's what old men do." He wasn't old. 34. Might as well be ancient by SEAL standards. Hawk set the photograph down gently like he was putting Isaac to rest all over again. The intelligence assessment came from 3rd Scout Sniper Platoon, Kira continued. Staff Sergeant Garrett Vance signed off on it. Single hostile, minimal security. They were wrong. 8 hostiles, heavy weapons. The SEAL team walked into an ambush. And now you're here to evaluate whether that platoon deserves to keep existing. That's the mission. Hawk studied her face. 4 years of working together had taught him to read her silences. You planning to give them a fair evaluation, or are you planning to destroy them? Kira met his eyes. I'm planning to find out if they're worth saving. If they are, we rebuild them. If they're not, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Hawk picked up his own coffee. Isaac believed in second chances, gave them to everyone, including me. What happened? Somalia, Mogadishu, 1993. I froze during an extraction. Cost us 3 minutes we didn't have. 2 Marines died because I couldn't move. Hawk's voice was flat, reciting facts. Wanted to quit after that. Isaac wouldn't let me. Said fear makes you human, but quitting makes you a coward. Difference is what you do next. So we give them a second chance. We give them a test. Same thing you got after Afghanistan. Same thing I got after Mogadishu. They pass, they earn the right to keep trying. They fail. Hawk let the silence finish his thought. Kira closed the folder. Evaluation begins tomorrow. Tonight I want to see them when they don't know they're being watched. The Recreation Center. First place I'd look if I wanted to understand a unit's real culture. Not what they show officers. What they show each other. Hawk smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. You're going to walk in there looking like a civilian, see how they treat someone they think doesn't matter. And you. I'll be there, but not with you. I want to see if anyone recognizes my name before I show my face. Kira headed for the door, then paused. Hawk, if this goes the way I think it's going to go, if these Marines are the reason Isaac died, then we find out if they can learn from it, Hawk said. Or we end them. Either way, Isaac gets justice. The recreation center at Camp Lejeune was exactly what Kira expected. 40 Marines, most of them in their 20s and 30s, blowing off steam after a day of training. Pool tables, a couple of big-screen TVS showing sports, the smell of beer and testosterone. She walked in at 1930 hours wearing dark jeans, a leather jacket, and her auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. To anyone watching, she looked like an off-duty operator, maybe Air Force, maybe contractor. Definitely not someone who belonged in a Marine recreation center. She'd chosen a corner booth with clear sight lines to all 3 exits. Old habits. In places where complacency meant death, you learned to always know where the doors were. Her phone came out. To anyone watching, she looked like she was scrolling through social media. In reality, she was documenting everything. Faces, ranks, group dynamics, the subtle hierarchies that revealed who really held power. Staff Sergeant Garrett Vance noticed her within 30 seconds. Kira had read his file on the flight in. 38 years old, 14 years in the Corps. Gulf War veteran's son trying to fill boots that might have been too big. His performance ratings were consistently high. His command climate surveys were consistently concerning. The kind of leader who confused intimidation with inspiration. Vance said something to the men around him. Laughter rippled outward. Kira didn't look up. She kept her attention on her phone, her posture relaxed, giving no sign she'd noticed. Let them come. Let them show who they really were. Well, the voice was close now, maybe 10 feet away. Looks like someone got lost on their way to the coffee shop. More laughter. Kira continued scrolling. Hey, sweetheart, I'm talking to you. Kira looked up slowly. Staff Sergeant Garrett Vance stood over her table with the posture of a man who'd never been told no by anyone he could physically intimidate. Behind him, 3 Marines formed a loose semicircle. Corporal Dax Sterling, Lance Corporal Hayes, Private First Class Morrison. She'd read all their files too. Sterling was the enforcer. Failed MARSOC selection twice. Channeled his inadequacy into aggression. Hayes was the follower desperate for acceptance. Morrison was young, uncomfortable, but silent. The kind of good kid who'd go along with bad things because he didn't know how to stand alone. Can I help you? Kira's voice was flat, unimpressed. Vance's smile didn't waver, but something flickered behind his eyes. People didn't usually respond to him with boredom. This is a military facility. Marines only. You visiting someone, I'm exactly where I need to be. Is that right? Vance pulled out the chair across from her and sat down without invitation. His Marines closed ranks around the booth, cutting off her exits. Amateur hour, Kira thought. These men had no idea what a real threat looked like. See, I think maybe you wandered in here looking for some jarhead boyfriend, Vance continued. And now you're in a room full of men who don't appreciate uninvited guests. Kira set her phone down. Her eyes met his with the kind of level stare that had made Taliban commanders reconsider their life choices. Uninvited, she said, letting the word hang. Last I checked, this recreation center was open to all authorized personnel. When did it become your personal kingdom, Staff Sergeant? The use of his rank landed like a slap. Vance's jaw tightened. The men around him exchanged glances. You know who I am, Vance said. I know a lot of things. Then you know you don't want to play games with me. Vance leaned forward, using his size as a weapon. He was 6'2", maybe 200 pounds of muscle and certainty. Against a woman who looked like she weighed maybe 130 soaking wet, the math seemed simple. The math was wrong. You've got a mouth on you, Vance said slowly. Someone should teach you some manners. Someone tried once, Kira replied. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. He walked with a limp for 6 months. Laughter exploded from a nearby table. Marines who'd been eavesdropping. The sound hit Vance like a physical blow. His authority was being challenged. His dominance was being questioned. In front of his own men, he couldn't let that stand. Sterling, Corporal Dax Sterling, moved with the eager violence of a man who'd been waiting for exactly this kind of permission. He circled behind Kira's booth, positioning himself at her back where she couldn't see him. Classic intimidation tactic. Surround the target, cut off escape routes, use superior numbers to establish dominance. It might have worked on a civilian. Ma'am, Sterling's voice was mock polite. I think it's time you left. Kira didn't turn around. I think I'll finish my drink first. That wasn't a request. Neither is this. Take 3 steps backward and keep your hands where I can see them. Sterling laughed. It was an ugly sound full of entitlement and cruelty. Listen, sweetheart. Don't call me sweetheart. I'll call you whatever I want. His hand reached for her shoulder, closed around it with bruising force. How about now, sweet? Kira moved. Her hand came up, captured his wrist, and applied a joint lock that turned his own grip into a lever against his elbow. Sterling gasped as his arm hyperextended, pain shooting through his nervous system like electricity. I warned you, Kira said. Her voice was still conversational. Let go of me. Sterling tried to pull free. Kira increased the pressure. He dropped to one knee, his face contorting with agony. The human elbow, Kira continued as if she were giving a classroom lecture, is a hinge joint, very strong in one direction, very vulnerable in others. Right now, I'm applying approximately 40 pounds of pressure to yours. At 60 pounds, the joint dislocates. At 80, the ligaments tear. Would you like me to demonstrate? No, Sterling's voice cracked. No, Jesus, let go! Kira released him. Sterling scrambled backward, cradling his arm against his chest. His face was a mask of shock and humiliation. Around them, the recreation center had gone silent. 40 Marines stared at the impossible scene unfolding before them. A woman who looked like she should be checking IDs at a college bar had just put their unit's toughest enforcer on his knees without breaking a sweat. Vance's face had gone pale, then red, then purple. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. You just assaulted a Marine, he said. His voice shook with barely contained fury. Your Marine grabbed me without permission, Kira replied. That's assault. I extracted myself using minimum necessary force. That's self-defense. Section 4 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I can cite the specific statute if you need help understanding. I don't give a damn about statutes. Vance was on his feet now, looming over her with all the physical presence he could muster. You think you can walk into my house, embarrass my men, and walk out like nothing happened? Kira looked up at him. Her eyes were absolutely cold. Your house? She tilted her head slightly. Interesting. Tell me, Staff Sergeant, do you always refer to military facilities as your personal property? Does command know about your territorial interpretation of government resources? The question was a trap beautifully constructed. If Vance backed down, he'd look weak in front of his men. If he escalated, he'd be confirming exactly the kind of command climate issues that evaluations were designed to uncover. He chose escalation. Get up. His voice dropped to a dangerous growl. No. I said get up. He reached for her arm. I said no. His hand closed around her wrist. It was a mistake. Kira flowed out of the booth like water taking the shape of violence. Her free hand struck the nerve cluster at his elbow. Her body rotated, redirecting his weight along vectors he couldn't control. Suddenly, Staff Sergeant Garrett Vance, 14 years in the Corps, Gulf War veteran son, master of every physical confrontation he'd ever been in, found himself bent backward over the table with a woman's forearm pressed against his throat. Not choking him, just controlling him, demonstrating with absolute clarity that she could end this however she wanted. "Here's what's going to happen," Kira said. Her voice was clear and calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "You're going to stop grabbing people without their permission. You're going to stop treating this facility like your personal kingdom. And you're going to start thinking very carefully about the consequences of underestimating people based on what they look like." "Who the hell are you?" Vance choked out. Kira smiled. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting months for this exact moment. "I'm Sergeant First Class Kira Wolf, Naval Special Warfare Command. Call sign Ghost." She paused, letting the sniper designation sink in. Letting these Marines understand that the woman who'd just put them on their backs could kill them from a mile away without breaking a sweat. "And for the next 72 hours, I own you." She released him. Vance stumbled backward, gasping, his hand going to his throat. Around the room, Marines were pulling out phones, recording, texting, spreading word of the impossible thing they'd just witnessed. Kira pulled a slim leather wallet from her jacket. She opened it with deliberate precision, revealing military identification with classification markings that made their security clearances look like library cards. "I've been on this base for 6 hours," she said. "In that time, I've documented 17 security protocol violations, observed multiple instances of hostile command climate, and now have video evidence of 2 Marines assaulting a superior officer." She gestured at all the phones that had been recording. "Thanks for the documentation, gentlemen." Vance's face had gone the color of old ash. "Ma'am, I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem, Staff Sergeant." Kira gathered her jacket with practiced efficiency. "You didn't know, you didn't ask, you didn't verify. You saw a woman alone in your territory, and you assumed she was prey." She walked toward the door, then paused. "That kind of assumption got 47 people killed last year, including someone very important to me, and to someone you're about to meet." The door behind her opened. Master Sergeant Thaddeus Brennan stepped into the recreation center. At 62, he still commanded a room just by entering it. Silver hair cut high and tight, campaign ribbons from Gulf War, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, eyes that had seen 3 decades of combat and come out the other side harder than steel. Some of the older Marines recognized those ribbons, recognized that face. Their expressions went from confused to terrified in the space of a heartbeat. "Master Sergeant Brennan," one of them whispered. The name rippled through the room like an electric shock. Hawk's voice when he spoke carried 30 years of command authority. "3rd Scout Sniper Platoon, your intelligence assessment. Syria, November 2018. 3 Navy SEALs killed in action because you reported minimal hostile presence when there were actually 16 combatants with heavy weapons." He walked slowly into the center of the room. Every eye followed him. "One of those SEALs was my brother, Staff Sergeant Isaac Brennan, 34 years old. 2 tours, Afghanistan, 1 Iraq. Father of 2 daughters. He died in a doorway because your unit couldn't be bothered to verify your intelligence before you sent men into a kill zone." The silence was absolute. Hawk's eyes found Vance. "Tomorrow morning, 0500 hours, Training Facility Bravo. You get 1 chance to prove you deserve to wear those uniforms." Kira stepped beside him. Together they looked like judgment itself. "Fail," Kira said quietly, "and I recommend this unit for immediate disbandment. Succeed, and maybe you get to rebuild." She pulled the leather folder from her jacket and tossed it onto the nearest table. "Those are my orders, signed by an admiral whose name you'll never see. Read them, then ask yourself if you really want to test whether I have the authority to end your careers." The door closed behind them. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Vance snatched up the wallet and began reading. His face went through a transformation that would have been comical if the implications weren't so catastrophic. "What does it say, Sarge?" Hayes' voice was barely above a whisper. Vance didn't answer. He just kept reading, his hands trembling slightly as the full scope of their situation became clear. She was real. Her authority was real. Master Sergeant Brennan was real. And tomorrow morning, everything they thought they knew about themselves was going to be tested against genuine special operations standards. "Get everybody together," Vance finally said. His voice was hollow. "Now, we need to talk about what just happened, and we need to figure out how we're going to survive the next 72 hours. Outside, Kira and Hawk walked through the darkness toward their quarters. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of pine and distant ocean. Kira pulled out her phone and dialed a number from memory. "Admiral, it's Ghost. Initial assessment complete." She paused, listening. "Yes, sir. Worse than expected. But there might be something worth saving. I'll know more after tomorrow." She ended the call and looked up at the stars. "I'm here, Isaac," she whispered. "And this time the people who failed you are going to learn what failure really costs." Beside her, Hawk said nothing, but his hand found her shoulder. Squeezed once. Let go. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight brought only the weight of promises made to the dead and the question of whether the living deserve the chance to make things right. Somewhere in the recreation center, 40 Marines were confronting the possibility that their careers might end because they'd underestimated a woman in a leather jacket. They had no idea that the real test hadn't even begun. The briefing room filled quickly. Word had spread through the battalion like wildfire. The woman who dropped Sterling and humiliated Vance was a SEAL sniper with authority to shut them down. Marines who hadn't been in the recreation center arrived with disbelief on their faces. Marines who had been there arrived with something worse, the hollow expression of men who'd seen their own futures evaporate. Vance stood at the front of the room, his injured hand wrapped in a field bandage. 40 faces stared back at him, waiting for leadership he wasn't sure he could provide. "I'm not going to sugarcoat this," he began. "We stepped in it. Bad." He held up the leather folder, the one Kira had tossed on the table like a grenade with the pin pulled. "That woman isn't some Pentagon bureaucrat we can bury in paperwork. She's Tier 1, codename Ghost, youngest female sniper in naval special warfare history. Confirmed kills at distances exceeding 1,600 meters. Murmurs rippled through the room. 1,600 meters. Nobody qualified at that distance. Hell, nobody even trained at that distance, except in computer simulations. She did it in Afghanistan, Vance continued, through a sandstorm, while under fire, saved 8 Army Rangers. The murmurs died, and she's here because of something we did. Syria, November 2018. Our intelligence assessment resulted in 3 SEAL casualties. Vance's voice cracked slightly. One of them was Master Sergeant Brennan's brother, Isaac Brennan, killed because we reported minimal hostile presence when there were actually 16 combatants with heavy weapons. Sergeant Ezra Lockhart, the platoon's best shooter, raised his hand. "So what's the play, Sarge? We just roll over and let her end our careers?" No, Vance straightened some of the old steel returning to his spine. "We fight, not like tonight that was stupid. We fight smart. We show her that whatever mistakes we've made, this unit is worth saving." "How?" Sterling asked from the back. He was still cradling his arm. "She wants a competition tomorrow. Sniper against sniper. Ezra, that's you. You're the best shooter we've got. If anyone can match her, it's you." Lockhart nodded slowly. "What's her longest confirmed kill?" 1,600 meters. The room went silent. 1,600 meters, almost a mile, through conditions that would make most shooters pack up and go home. "That's impossible," someone said from the back row. Vance's expression darkened. "She did it. Which means tomorrow morning you're going to see what Tier 1 capability actually looks like. And then you're going to prove that we can learn from it." Private First Class Colt Ramsey raised his hand. He was 23, the youngest Marine in the platoon, and he looked terrified. "What about the rest of us, Sarge?" Vance looked at his youngest Marine. The kid looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. "Study everything, protocols, procedures, regulations. She's going to test us on things we should already know, things we've been too arrogant to remember." He paused. "And for God's sake, nobody touch her again. You understand she's not the enemy. We are. We've been our own worst enemy for years, and she's just holding up a mirror." The briefing broke up at 2300 hours. Most of the Marines headed to study areas or the range. Vance went somewhere else. The base memorial wall stood in a quiet corner of the main compound. Names etched in bronze, lives reduced to letters and dates. Vance had walked past it 1,000 times without stopping. Tonight he stopped. His fingers found the name without searching. Staff Sergeant Isaac Brennan, SEAL Team 5, KIA Syria. "I didn't know," Vance whispered. "I swear I didn't know the intel was bad. I thought I was doing my job." The bronze didn't answer. It never did. "Your brother's going to end me tomorrow. And maybe he should. Maybe I deserve it." Footsteps behind him. Vance turned. Kira Wolf stood 10 feet away, her face half shadowed by the memorial's overhead light. She'd changed out of her civilian clothes into Navy working uniform, to her rank insignia visible now. "How long have you been standing there?" Vance asked. "Long enough." She walked forward until she was beside him, looking at the same names. "I watched your briefing," she said. "Cameras in the ceiling, standard security measure on classified facilities. So you heard everything." "Everything." Vance didn't know what to say to that. "You told them the truth," Kira continued. "You took responsibility. That's more than I expected." "It doesn't change what happened." "No, it doesn't." She turned to face him. Tell me about the intelligence assessment. Syria, what made you confident enough to sign off on minimal hostile presence? Vance's jaw tightened. We had three sources. Local informants, satellite imagery signals, intelligence. All of them indicated single target, minimal security. Did you verify those sources? I... Vance stopped. I trusted the chain. The sources had been reliable before. Before isn't during. Kira's voice was quiet but sharp. Every situation is new. Every assessment requires fresh verification. You know that. I know that now. The words came out harsher than Vance intended. He took a breath. After Syria, I went back through everything, found inconsistencies in the local intel. The satellite imagery was 48 hours old, plenty of time for the situation to change. The signal's intelligence was being interpreted by an analyst who'd been on duty for 16 straight hours. And you signed anyway. And I signed anyway, because I was arrogant, because I thought Marines knew better than everyone else, because I was so damn certain. His voice broke. Kira studied him for a long moment. Tomorrow's evaluation has two parts, she finally said. The first is a sniper competition. Your man against me. That's for show, something your Marines can watch, something to establish baseline competence. And the second part, that's the real test. Kira's voice hardened. After the shooting, I'm going to disappear into your training facility. Your entire platoon will have 2 hours to locate and capture me. If you succeed, I'll recommend this unit for continued operation with mandatory retraining. Well, if we fail, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. How are we supposed to capture a SEAL sniper in her own element? Vance asked. You're not, Kira said, but the attempt will tell me everything I need to know about whether this unit has any capacity for growth, whether you can adapt, whether you can learn. She paused. Whether Isaac's death meant anything at all. She turned and walked away. Commander. Vance's voice stopped her. She looked back. For what it's worth, my shooter Lockhart, he's good. Maybe the best I've ever trained. I know, Kira said. I read his file too. Consistent scores at 800 meters. Strong fundamentals, excellent wind reading. She paused. You don't sound impressed. 800 meters is qualification range, Staff Sergeant. Where I come from, that's warm-up. Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness. Vance stood alone with the dead for a long time after that. 0500 came too fast. The training facility was already occupied when 3rd Platoon arrived. General Victor Stone, the battalion commander. Major Patricia Vance, and most terrifyingly, a collection of senior officers whose presence suggested this evaluation mattered to people far above Vance's pay grade. But it was Kira who commanded everyone's attention. She stood at the firing line in full combat gear, her SR-25 rifle resting against her hip with the casual familiarity of an extension of her own body. She looked completely relaxed, completely confident, completely terrifying. Master Sergeant Hawk Brennan stood beside General Stone. The two men spoke quietly, old warriors who'd seen enough combat to fill volumes no one would ever read. Stone had commanded units in the Gulf War. Hawk had served in them. Gentlemen, General Stone's voice carried across the field. He was 70 years old, a Gulf War legend. You are about to participate in a practical evaluation designed to assess this unit's operational readiness. Sergeant Wolf has designed a two-phase test. The first phase is a shooting competition. The second phase is a tactical exercise. He paused, letting the weight of his rank settle over them. I want to be clear about something. This evaluation is not ceremonial. The results will determine whether 3rd Scout Sniper Platoon continues to exist as a functional unit. Your performance today matters. Colonel Davis stepped forward. Sergeant Lockhart, you'll be representing the platoon in Phase 1. Standard qualification course followed by extended range demonstration. Sergeant Wolf will shoot first to establish baseline. Kira moved to the firing line without fanfare. Her movements were economical, precise. No wasted motion, no showmanship. She settled behind her rifle like she was coming home. Targets are set at 400, 600, and 800 meters, Davis announced. Standard Marine qualification, 10 rounds per distance. Sergeant Wolf, you may begin when ready. Kira's first shot was perfect, so was her second, and her third. By the time she finished the 800-meter set, she hadn't missed once. 30 rounds, 30 hits, dead center, every single one. The Marines watched in silence. This wasn't just skill. This was something else entirely. A level of mastery that separated the exceptional from the realm where physics bent to will. Qualification complete, Davis announced. Perfect score. Sergeant Wolf, do you wish to proceed to extended range? Kira stood up from her rifle and looked directly at Vance. With the Colonel's permission, I'd like to demonstrate at ranges of my choosing. 1,000 meters, 1,200 meters, 1,600 meters. She paused. I want your men to understand exactly what they're dealing with. Davis looked at Stone. The general nodded. Proceed. Kira settled back behind her rifle. 1,000 meters away, a steel target the size of a human torso waited. She took one breath, held it, squeezed. The clang of impact reached them a full second after the shot. Dead center. 1,200 meters. Same result. The 1,600-meter target was smaller, maybe 12 inches across. At that distance, it was barely visible to the naked eye. Wind gusted across the range in unpredictable patterns. Heat shimmer distorted everything. Kira didn't move for 30 seconds. She was reading the wind, calculating, adjusting for variables that most shooters couldn't even perceive. Then she fired. The clang was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there, dead center. 40 Marines stood in stunned silence. What they'd just witnessed belonged in after-action reports they'd dismissed as exaggerated. Now they knew better. That's impossible, Sterling whispered. That's absolutely impossible. Kira stood up and stepped back from her rifle. Your turn, Sergeant Lockhart. Lockhart walked to the line like a man approaching his own execution. His hands were steady, years of discipline ensured that. But his eyes told a different story. He'd just watched a woman do things he'd been told were theoretical. His qualification round was excellent. Not perfect, 3 shots at 800 meters drifted slightly right, but excellent. 27 out of 30. Any other day he'd have been proud. Today it felt like failure. Extended range, Davis asked. Lockhart nodded. He had to try. His unit's survival depended on it. The 1,000-meter shot landed slightly off-center, but a hit. 1,200 meters. He took his time. Read the wind, adjusted, fired. The target didn't ring. He tried again. Miss. Again, miss. That's enough. General Stone's voice was gentle, almost kind. Stand down, Sergeant. Lockhart stepped back from his rifle. His face was blank, but his hands were shaking. Kira approached him. For a moment, Vance tensed, expecting mockery. Instead, Kira's words came quiet, almost respectful. You're a good shooter, better than 90% of Marines I've seen. Your fundamentals are solid. Your wind reading is competent. But you're better. No, I've just failed more and learned from it. She looked at Vance. That's not your fault. That's how you were taught. You've been trained to meet standards, not exceed them. She turned to address the assembled Marines. Phase 1 is complete. You've seen what Tier 1 capability looks like. Now comes the real test. Her voice carried across the field. In 15 minutes, I will enter your training facility. You will have 2 hours to locate and capture me. 40 men against 1. Sterling muttered something. Kira's smile was winter. Those don't sound like fair odds, she said. You're right. You should probably ask for reinforcements. She checked her watch. 15 minutes, gentlemen. I suggest you use them wisely. Then she walked toward the training facility, disappearing into the complex like a ghost returning to haunt the living. Vance gathered his men into a tight circle. Listen up. Everything we've done before, but every exercise, every drill, every operation, forget it. She's not going to behave like any enemy we've trained against. She's going to exploit every assumption, every habit, every weakness. So what do we do? Ramsey asked. We adapt. Vance looked at his youngest Marine. While the rest of us run standard search patterns, I want you thinking differently. Ask yourself, where would she never expect us to look? What would she never expect us to do? Why me? Because you're the only one here who doesn't have 10 years of bad habits to unlearn. Vance put his hand on Ramsey's shoulder. Today, that might be our biggest advantage. The timer started. Somewhere in the training facility, Kira Wolf began hunting the hunters. The first 15 minutes were silent. 40 Marines spread across the training facility in textbook formation, covering sectors, maintaining communication, following every protocol they'd ever been taught. Their radio discipline was perfect. Their movement patterns were professional. Their confidence was absolute. They had no idea they were already losing. Alpha team in position, Sector 1 clear, Sterling reported. Bravo team holding Sector 2, no contact. Charlie team sweeping Sector 3, nothing. Vance listened to the reports from his command post and felt the first cold fingers of doubt crawling up his spine. It was too quiet, too easy. Kira wasn't hiding. She was planning. At 23 minutes, the first Marine went down. Private Rodriguez was holding a corner position in Sector 4 when his radio went dead. No warning, no sound, just silence where his voice should have been. Rodriguez, report. Vance's voice was sharp. Nothing. Rodriguez. Silence. Bravo team, check on Rodriguez. Now! Two Marines broke from their positions and moved toward Rodriguez's last known location. They found him sitting against a wall, his hands zip-tied behind his back, a piece of paper taped to his chest. The note read, 1 of 40. Your communications are predictable. Change frequencies every 7 minutes, not 15. Son of a... Sterling's voice cracked with frustration. She took him without anyone hearing a thing. How? Hayes demanded. There were 3 of us within 50 meters. Because she's better than us, Ramsey said quietly. She's not playing our game. She's playing her own. Vance stared at the tactical map, trying to understand what he was missing. Kira had taken a man from the center of their formation without triggering a single alarm. That wasn't just skill. That was understanding terrain and psychology in ways they'd never been taught. All teams tighten formation. Nobody operates alone. Minimum 2-man elements from now on. The adjustment came too late. At 31 minutes, Kira's voice crackled across every radio frequency simultaneously. Staff Sergeant Vance, your encryption is laughable. I've been listening to your tactical communications since minute 3. 40 Marines froze. Here's what I've learned, Kira continued, her voice calm and conversational. Your Alpha team leader checks his watch before giving orders, tells me he's working on a timeline. Your Bravo team has a 3.2-second gap in their rotation every 45 seconds. Your Charlie team hasn't changed their patrol pattern once since the exercise began. She paused. If I can identify your patterns in 30 minutes, what could an enemy do with 30 days? The radio went silent. How is she doing this? Hayes whispered. She's not doing anything special, Vance said slowly, the realization hitting him like ice water. She's just paying attention, something we forgot how to do. New plan, he continued. Everyone switch to backup frequencies. Randomize your patrol patterns, and for God's sake, stop being predictable. The next 17 minutes were chaos. Marines abandoned their training, improvising, trying to be unpredictable. Some succeeded, most didn't. The harder they tried to break their patterns, the more obvious their attempts became. Kira picked them apart with surgical precision. Lance Corporal Hayes went down at the 44-minute mark, found zip-tied in a supply closet he'd been certain was empty. The note on his chest read 2 of 40. Your random patterns follow predictable logic. Humans are terrible at true randomness. Corporal Patterson was next taken from a position he'd chosen specifically because it broke protocol. His note said, 3 of 40. Breaking patterns only works if you understand the new pattern you're creating. 2 more fell at the 52-minute mark, a paired team that had been watching each other's backs with perfect discipline. They never saw Kira coming. They never heard her. One moment they were professionals executing their training. The next moment they were casualties with matching notes that read, 4 and 5 of 40, mutual security is an illusion when neither person knows what to look for. This is insane, Sterling growled into his radio. We've got 40 trained Marines and she's picking us off like we're recruits on the first day of boot camp. Because we're fighting her way, Ramsey said quietly. What? She set the rules. She picked the battlefield. She chose the tactics. We're reacting to her instead of forcing her to react to us. Vance heard something in the young Marine's voice that made him pause. Ramsey, what are you thinking? She knows how Marines operate, right? She's studied us, trained against us. She can predict everything we're going to do because we do it the same way every time. So what if we stop being Marines? What if we start being something else? The radio went quiet for a long moment. Ramsey, Vance's voice was careful. What exactly are you proposing? Let me go dark, Sarge. Radio off. No pattern, no logic. I'm going to stop thinking like a hunter and start thinking like prey. That's insane. It's what she'd do. Ramsey's certainty surprised everyone, including himself. She's not hunting Sarge. She's herding us, moving us where she wants us, using our own training against us. So I'm going to disappear. And when she looks for me, I'll be looking back. Vance closed his eyes. It was a terrible plan. It violated every principle of unit cohesion and coordinated movement. It would leave Ramsey completely alone against someone who had already demonstrated she could take Marines at will. It was also the first creative, tactical thinking he'd heard all day. Do it. Radio silent. We'll run distraction patterns to keep her focused on the main force. Understood, Sarge. Ramsey going dark. The radio clicked off. Somewhere in the training facility, a 23-year-old Marine was about to test whether courage and creativity could overcome training and experience. And somewhere else in that same facility, Kira Wolf smiled. She'd been waiting for someone to adapt. The next 20 minutes were a massacre. Kira moved through the Marine formation like smoke through fingers. She appeared from shadows they'd checked, vanished into spaces they'd cleared, and left a trail of zip-tied professionals who would spend years wondering how they'd failed so completely. 6 of 40, 7, 8, 9. Each note contained a specific critique, not insults, not mockery, clinical assessments of exactly where each Marine had failed and why. 10 of 40, your breathing is too loud when you're nervous. 11 of 40, you telegraphed your movement by shifting weight to your lead foot. 12 of 40, you trusted technology over instinct. Your thermal signature betrayed you. Vance watched his force crumble. What he felt wasn't fear anymore. It was understanding. Complete total understanding that they'd been playing soldier while Kira had been a warrior. She's not even using weapons, Lockhart reported, his voice hollow. She's taking us down with pressure points and joint locks. She could kill every one of us, and she's choosing not to. That's the point, Vance said quietly. The realization settled into his bones. She's showing us mercy. She's teaching us, and we're too proud to learn. 15, 16, 17. By the 70-minute mark, Kira had neutralized nearly half the platoon without a single shot fired. The remaining Marines had clustered together in defensive positions, abandoning offense entirely, hoping that numerical superiority would protect them from a threat they couldn't see, couldn't predict, couldn't understand. It didn't. 18 and 19 went down together, taken from behind, while their partners looked the wrong direction. 20 fell while calling for backup, the zip ties around his wrist clicking shut before his radio transmission finished. And then something changed. Kira's voice crackled across the frequency again, but this time something in her tone was different. Staff Sergeant Vance, I'm impressed. One of your Marines has gone off-grid. Ramsey, I assume. Vance felt a surge of pride mixed with terror. He's been invisible for the last 43 minutes, Kira continued. He's learning. A pause, which means this exercise just got interesting. 21 minutes remaining. I'm going to continue reducing your force while hunting your wild card. May the best operator win. The radio went silent. Vance looked at the tactical map. 20 men left against a ghost who'd already proven she could take them all. But somewhere out there, Colt Ramsey was hunting too. Ramsey had spent the first 40 minutes doing nothing. He'd found a maintenance crawl space that wasn't on any map, wedged himself into a position that would be torture for anyone larger than his lean frame, and simply waited. He didn't move. He didn't breathe loudly. He became part of the building itself. It was he realized exactly what Kira had done at the beginning. She hadn't started hunting them immediately. She'd observed, learned, built a mental map of who they were and how they operated. So Ramsey watched. He watched through a ventilation grate as Kira passed within 3 feet of his position, moving with a fluid grace that barely disturbed the air. He memorized her movement patterns, the way she checked corners, the subtle rhythm of her breathing. She was good. Impossibly good. But she was still human, and humans had patterns, even the ones who thought they didn't. At the 87-minute mark, Ramsey left his hiding spot. He didn't move toward where Kira had been. He moved toward where she would be. The logic was simple once he stopped thinking like a Marine. Kira wasn't random. She was efficient. She was working through their formations, systematically neutralizing threats, while maintaining positions that gave her multiple escape routes. That meant there were places she would go and places she wouldn't. Ramsey positioned himself in a place she wouldn't expect anyone competent to be, a dead end with no tactical value, no cover, no concealment. It was such a terrible position that no trained operator would choose it, which meant Kira would never look there. He waited. 93 minutes in, he heard footsteps. Light. Controlled. Coming closer. Kira passed the entrance to his dead-end corridor without slowing. Why would she check it? There was nothing there worth finding. Ramsey counted to 3. Then he moved. He didn't try to fight her. He didn't try to subdue her. He'd seen what happened to people who tried that approach. Instead, he simply followed, matching her pace, staying in her blind spot, learning her rhythm. For 8 minutes, he shadowed the ghost. Kira took 2 more Marines during that time. Ramsey watched how she did it, the approach angles, the timing, the pressure points she targeted. He filed everything away, building a profile of her tactics the same way she'd built profiles of theirs. Then she stopped. You can come out now, Private Ramsey. Ramsey's heart seized. How he'd been perfect. He'd done everything right. Your shadow fell across my peripheral vision 6 minutes ago, Kira said without turning around. I've been letting you follow me to see what you'd do. She turned to face him. In the dim light of the training facility, her eyes were almost luminous. Most people would have attacked by now. Why didn't you? Ramsey's throat was dry. Because I can't beat you in a fight, ma'am, but I can learn from you, and what I learn I can teach. Kira studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in her expression. Not warmth exactly, but recognition. How old are you, Ramsey? 23, ma'am. You remind me of someone. Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. Isaac used to say that the best operators aren't the ones who win every fight. They're the ones who know which fights to avoid. Isaac Brennan, Master Sergeant Brennan's brother. Kira's jaw tightened. Yes. I'm sorry about what happened to him, ma'am. I know our unit's intelligence. Don't, the word came out sharp enough to cut. Don't apologize for something you didn't do. That's cheap. If you want to honor his memory, be better than the people who failed him. Ramsey nodded slowly. Kira reached into her vest and pulled out a set of zip ties. She handed them to him. Here's your first lesson. Sometimes surrendering is the smartest tactical decision. I'm giving you a choice, Private. You can let me zip tie you and this encounter ends with you as another casualty. She paused. Or you can take these back to your command post and report everything you've learned. That's not much of a choice. Every choice is significant, Kira said. The question is whether you have the wisdom to see it. Ramsey looked at the zip ties in his hands. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. What happens if I go back? Then you become the first Marine today who didn't fail. And maybe your unit survives this evaluation. Ramsey turned and walked away. He didn't run. He didn't look back. He carried the zip ties like they were made of gold, because in that moment they were worth more than gold. They were worth the future of 40 men who'd forgotten how to learn. Behind him, Kira watched him go. Not bad, kid, she whispered to herself. Not bad at all. The command post fell silent when Ramsey walked in. Vance looked at his youngest Marine, unbound, unharmed, carrying enemy equipment like a trophy. Something had changed in Ramsey's eyes. The nervous recruit who'd arrived that morning was gone. In his place stood someone who'd seen behind the curtain and survived. Ramsey, Vance's voice was careful. Report. She caught me, Sarge. Knew I was there the whole time. Said she let me follow her because she wanted to see what I'd do. And she let me go. Ramsey set the zip ties on the tactical table. She said it was a choice, that surrendering was sometimes the smartest tactical decision. So why didn't she zip tie you? Because I wasn't trying to win, Sarge. I was trying to learn, and she respected that. The room went quiet. 8 minutes left, Sterling said quietly. We've lost 23 men. She's going to finish us. Maybe, Vance said. He picked up the zip ties Ramsey had brought back. Or maybe we've been thinking about this all wrong. What do you mean? She's not trying to destroy us. She could have done that in the first 30 minutes. Vance turned the ties over in his hands. She's trying to teach us. Every note she left, every tactical correction, every single thing she's done today, it's all been lessons. He set the ties down. The question isn't whether we can beat her. We can't. The question is whether we can prove we're worth saving. The final 8 minutes ticked away. Kira didn't take another Marine. Instead, she walked directly to the command post, passing through their remaining security like it didn't exist. She pushed open the door and stepped inside, finding Vance sitting alone at the tactical table. She was drinking his coffee, reading his classified patrol reports, completely at ease in the heart of enemy territory. You could have captured me, she said without preamble. Ramsey had my position. He could have called it in. Would it have mattered? No, Kira set down the coffee cup, but it would have shown initiative. It would have shown you understood what this exercise was really about. And what is it about? Transformation. Kira's voice carried the weight of months of grief and a lifetime of lessons learned in blood. Your unit has 3 critical failures. Your intelligence protocols are outdated, your communication security is non-existent, and your leadership culture prioritizes ego over competence. Vance didn't argue. He couldn't. These failures killed 47 personnel in the last 18 months, Staff Sergeant, including Isaac Brennan. She pulled a folder from her vest, thick, heavily classified, containing the documented evidence of a unit's systematic dysfunction. I have the authority to end you, all of you. One signature, and 3rd Platoon becomes a footnote in Marine Corps history. The folder landed on the table between them with a heavy thud. So end us. Vance's voice was hollow. If that's what we deserve, then do it. Don't drag it out. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. What matters is whether my men can become better than what I made them. Vance looked up, and Kira saw something she hadn't expected in his eyes. Not defeat, something different. Acceptance. We're broken, Commander. I broke them. With my ego, my arrogance, my absolute certainty that Marines were superior to everyone else. His voice cracked. Isaac Brennan died because I was too proud to double-check my intelligence. And tonight you showed me that my pride would have gotten more people killed. The silence that followed was absolute. So break us down completely, Vance continued. Disband the unit if that's what it takes. But please give my men a chance to rebuild. They followed my lead because that's what Marines do. If someone has to be punished for what we've become, punish me. Just me. Kira studied him for a long moment. The arrogant sergeant who'd confronted her in the recreation center was gone. In his place sat a man who'd finally seen himself clearly. You really mean that? Every word. Kira reached for the folder. She opened it slowly, deliberately, letting Vance see the recommendation forms inside. The ones that would end careers. The ones that would scatter 40 families to the winds of bureaucratic consequence. Then she pulled out a different document. This is provisional approval for intensive retraining, she said quietly. 72 hours of joint operations integration with SEAL Team 5. Cultural reformation supervised by Naval Special Warfare Command. Quarterly evaluations for the next 2 years. Vance stared at the document like it was written in a foreign language. I'm not here to destroy you, Staff Sergeant. I'm here to rebuild you. The words came measured, deliberate. Isaac believed that failure was a teacher, not an ending. That's what Hawk taught me when I wanted to quit after Afghanistan. Why after everything we did? Because tonight your youngest Marine showed me something worth saving. Ramsey didn't try to beat me. He tried to learn from me. And when I gave him a choice, he chose growth over glory. She stood up. Tomorrow morning, 0600 hours, we start over, all of us. But understand something, Staff Sergeant. This is your last chance. My mercy has limits. Isaac's memory has limits. Don't make me regret believing in your capacity to change. The door closed behind her. Vance sat alone in the command post holding a document that represented something he'd stopped believing in. Hope. The next 72 hours transformed 3rd Scout Sniper Platoon in ways that would be studied at Quantico for years to come. Day 1 began at 0600 with Kira demonstrating close-quarters combat techniques that didn't exist in any Marine Corps manual. Every Marine hit the ground 12 times before noon. By evening, Sterling was recovering mid-throw, small victories that felt monumental. Day 2 brought SEAL Team 5. Lieutenant Commander Silas Drake stepped off the transport first. At 45, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who'd survived 2 decades of operations most people would never hear about. He'd served with Isaac Brennan in Afghanistan, had been there when the intel came through about the Syria mission, had watched 3 of his teammates walk into an ambush because 3rd Platoon's assessment said it was safe. He knew exactly why he was here. Drake's eyes found Vance across the training ground. No hostility, just assessment, measuring the man who'd signed the report that killed his friends. Staff Sergeant Vance, Drake said, extending his hand, let's see if your Marines can work with SEALs without trying to outdo us. It wasn't friendly, but it wasn't hostile either. It was professional, and that Vance realized was a gift he hadn't earned yet. The first joint exercise was a disaster. Marines and SEALs couldn't coordinate. The Marines kept trying to lead defaulting to the competitive mindset that had defined their training. The SEALs adapted around them, but the friction was obvious. Kira stopped the exercise after 17 minutes. What did you see? She asked the assembled teams. Silence. Fine, I'll tell you. She pointed at Vance. Your team advanced on the objective like you were trying to beat the SEALs to the finish line. You weren't supporting them, you were racing them. Old habits, Vance admitted. Old habits get people killed. Kira's voice was sharp. This isn't competition. War doesn't care which branch reaches the objective first. War cares whether Americans come home alive. She turned to Drake. Your assessment. The Marines have skills, Drake said carefully. But they're fighting with us instead of alongside us. It's like they've been trained to see every other unit as a rival rather than an ally. Because they have been. Kira addressed the Marines directly. Your entire culture is built on being better than everyone else. Marines versus Army. Marines versus Navy. Marines versus Air Force. You've been told you're the best for so long that you've forgotten how to be part of a team that includes people who aren't Marines. The words landed like punches. Reset, Kira ordered. We're doing it again. And this time, Staff Sergeant, your only job is to support the SEAL advance, Not lead it, not compete with it. Support it. Vance nodded slowly. Understood. The second attempt was better. Not good, but better. By the fourth iteration, something clicked. Ramsey was the first to notice it, a Marine fire team moving in perfect synchronization with a SEAL element, covering each other's movements, communicating through hand signals, rather than words, functioning as a single unit, rather than two separate forces. There, Kira said, pointing at the coordinated movement. That's what partnership looks like. Nobody's leading, nobody's following. They're just executing together. Day 3 brought the final evaluation. Combined force hunts Kira. She evades for 47 minutes, less than half her previous time. At minute 48, Ramsey and a SEAL operator coordinate a takedown that would have been impossible 72 hours earlier. Kira surrendered gracefully. 47 minutes, she said, brushing dirt off her uniform. Yesterday you couldn't touch me in 2 hours. Today you caught me in under an hour. She looked at Vance. What changed? We stopped trying to win, Vance said slowly. We started trying to work together. Exactly, Akira addressed both teams. Individual excellence is worthless if it can't be integrated into a larger effort. The best operators I've ever known weren't the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who made everyone around them better. She paused and something shifted in her voice. Isaac taught me that. A long time ago. Now you're learning it too. That night, Kira found herself at the memorial wormhole again. She hadn't planned to come here. Her feet had simply carried her to this place, to these names, to this silence. Isaac's name gleamed in the bronze like a question she still didn't know how to answer. Are you proud of me? She whispered. Am I doing this right? Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. Commander. Vance's voice was quiet, respectful. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding. Kira gestured at the space beside her. There's room for both of us. Vance moved to stand next to her, his eyes finding Isaac's name immediately. I've walked past this wall 1,000 times since I transferred here. Never stopped until 3 days ago. Why not? Because stopping would mean acknowledging that the names were real, that they were people. His voice cracked slightly. It's easier to think of casualties as statistics, numbers on a report, things that happen to other units, other missions, other people's friends. Until they're your fault. Vance flinched. They stood in silence for a long moment. Two people from different worlds joined by a shared weight of responsibility and grief. Tell me about him, Vance said finally. Not the classified stuff. Just who he was. Kira's breath caught. Nobody had asked her that, not the admirals who debriefed her, not the counselors, not even the SEAL team members who'd served beside Isaac for years. Nobody had asked who he was, just what he'd done. He was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, she said, and the words surprised her with their softness. Used to leave cards on people's desks. Stupid cards with terrible jokes, but he never forgot. Vance didn't interrupt, just listened. He found me at a shooting competition when I was 17. I'd just broken a national record, and everyone wanted to talk about my technique, my training, my future in competitive shooting. Kira's voice caught. Isaac asked me what I was afraid of. What did you tell him? I told him I was afraid of being ordinary, of having this gift and wasting it on paper targets while people were dying in places I couldn't pronounce. She wiped at her eyes. He said he knew a place where I could make a difference, where my gift could save lives instead of winning trophies. And I said yes before he finished the sentence. He was right. Was he? Kira turned to face Vance. Because sometimes I wonder, I've done things, Staff Sergeant, things that keep me awake at night, things that made me question whether saving some lives justifies taking others. You saved those Rangers in Afghanistan. I also killed a nurse who volunteered her time to help strangers in a war zone. Her name was Rachel Morrison. She was 24 years old. She had a fiancé waiting for her in Ohio. Kira's voice was barely audible now. I see her face every time I close my eyes. Vance was quiet for a long moment. In my first deployment, he said finally, I called in an airstrike on a building we were told was an insurgent command center. Turned out to be a school. 6 children died because I trusted intelligence I should have verified. The confession hung in the darkness between them. I told myself it wasn't my fault. The intel was wrong. Fog of war. Collateral damage happens. His voice broke. But I knew. Somewhere deep down I knew I should have checked, should have waited, should have been more careful. So you stopped being careful? Vance looked at her sharply. What? You stopped trusting anyone's intelligence, including your own. You built walls. You convinced yourself that confidence was the same as competence. That never admitting doubt meant never being responsible for mistakes. Kira's eyes were gentle despite her words. It's a common response to trauma, protection through aggression. How do you know that? Because I did the same thing. After Isaac died, I shut down. Stopped trusting Marine intelligence entirely. Stopped trusting anyone outside my immediate team. I came here ready to destroy your unit because destroying you felt safer than admitting I couldn't save him. So why didn't you? Because of Ramsey. Kira's voice softened. He reminded me that people can change, that growth matters more than punishment, that Isaac would have wanted me to build bridges, not burn them. Vance was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, stripped of pretense. Just a man trying to understand his own failures. Can we fix this? Really fix it? Not just pass your evaluation, but actually become what we should have been all along. I don't know, Kira said. The honesty was brutal. But I know you can try. And trying is more than most people ever manage. She reached out and touched Isaac's name one final time. Isaac never gave up on people. Not when they failed, not when they wanted to quit. He'd say, one bad day doesn't define you, what you do next does. She looked at Vance. I'm offering you what he offered me 10 years ago. A chance to prove that one bad day doesn't define you. Don't waste it. 3 months later, the quarterly review arrived on a Tuesday morning. Vance stood before his platoon with the results in his hands. His fingers trembled slightly. Not from fear, from something he hadn't felt in 14 years of military service. Possibility. 0 deficiencies, he read aloud, his voice catching on the words. Joint Operations Integration Rating, exceptional. Command Climate Survey significantly improved. Recommendation full operational certification confirmed. The recreation center erupted. Marines who 3 months ago had been humiliated beyond recognition were now embracing shouting, celebrating a victory that meant more than any combat ribbon ever could. They had survived. More than that, they had transformed. Sterling grabbed Ramsey in a bear hug that lifted the younger Marine off his feet. We did it. We actually did it. Put me down, you idiot. But Ramsey was laughing, his face split by a grin that made him look even younger than his 23 years. You're gonna break my ribs. Hayes was already on his phone calling his wife with the news. His voice cracked as he told her that his career wasn't over. That the kids wouldn't have to change schools. That everything they'd worked for hadn't been destroyed by one terrible night in a recreation center. Vance watched his men celebrate and felt something shift inside his chest. The weight he'd been carrying since Soraya, since the intelligence failure, since Isaac Brennan's death, since the moment he'd realized his arrogance had cost lives, didn't disappear. It never would, but it changed. Became something he could carry instead of something that carried him. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Told you they were worth saving. Ghost. Vance smiled and typed back. Thank you for everything. The response came immediately. Don't thank me yet. Deployment orders are coming. Show me what you've learned. 2 weeks later, those orders arrived. Afghanistan, Helmand Province, joint operation with SEAL Team 5. High-value target extraction in hostile territory. The kind of mission that would have terrified the old 3rd Platoon. Not because of the enemy, because of the collaboration it required. Now it felt like the opportunity they'd been preparing for. Vance briefed his men with a confidence he hadn't possessed 3 months ago. Not the old confidence, the arrogant certainty that Marines were superior to everyone else. This was something different. Earned confidence. The kind that came from knowing exactly what you were capable of because you'd tested those limits and pushed past them. We're operating as support element for SEAL Fire Team Viper, he explained. Our job is to secure the extraction route and provide overwatch during the target acquisition phase. We are not competing with the SEALs. We are not trying to prove anything. We are doing our job and coming home alive. What about the intelligence package? Sterling asked. The question would have been unthinkable 3 months ago. Questioning the intel was questioning authority. And the old 3rd Platoon didn't question authority. We verified it through 3 independent sources, Vance said, meeting his corporal's eyes. I personally reviewed the assessment with Commander Wolf before she approved our participation. If there are gaps, we'll adapt. That's what we do now. Ramsey raised his hand. Sarge, I've been studying the terrain. There's a secondary approach that isn't in the primary plan. If things go sideways, show me. Ramsey pulled up his tablet and walked Vance through an alternative route he'd identified during his own review of the operational area. It was unconventional. It broke standard doctrine. It was exactly the kind of adaptive thinking Kira had spent 72 hours drilling into their heads. Good work, Vance said, looking at his youngest Marine with something approaching pride. We'll keep this in reserve. If the primary plan fails, you're on point. Ramsey nodded, his face serious but steady. He wasn't the nervous recruit who'd stood silent while his seniors harassed a woman in a recreation center. He was an operator now, a professional. They all were. The insertion went smoothly. Vance led his element through the Afghan darkness with the quiet efficiency that 3 months of intensive training had instilled. No wasted movement, no unnecessary communication. Just professionals doing their job in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. SEAL Fire Team Viper was already in position when the Marines arrived. Lieutenant Commander Silas Drake acknowledged Vance with a nod, the kind of respect that could only exist between equals. Good to see you, Staff Sergeant. Likewise, sir, my element is in position. We've got your extraction covered. Drake studied him for a moment. I heard you've been putting in work since Commander Wolf's evaluation. We had good teachers. Drake smiled slightly. She said you'd say that. Also said to watch your six. She's got a feeling about this one. The words sent a chill down Vance's spine. Kira Wolf's feelings weren't superstition. They were pattern recognition honed by years of operating in environments where intuition meant survival. Tell your men to stay sharp, Drake continued. We move in 15. Somewhere on a ridge, 300 meters away, Kira settled behind her SR-25, her scope tracking the valley below. She'd positioned herself to provide overwatch for both the SEAL element and the Marine support team. From here, she could see everything, and what she saw made her uneasy. The intelligence said the target was lightly guarded, 3, maybe 4 hostiles. Quick in, quick out. But something about the compound's positioning bothered her. Too many sight lines. Too many approaches that weren't covered in the briefing. She keyed her radio. Viper Ghost Eye, I'm on overwatch. Something feels off about this layout. Drake's voice came back calm. Copy that, Ghost. What are you seeing? The compound has better defensive positioning than the brief suggested. Multiple overlapping fields of fire. If I were setting up a defense, I'd put observers on the secondary approach. The secondary approach is supposed to be clear. Supposed to be, which Kira adjusted her scope. But I've learned not to trust supposed to be. Recommend we add a recon pass on secondary before we commit. Oh, negative. Would add 15 minutes to timeline. Just keep it in your threat assessment. If things go loud, assume that approach is compromised. Understood. Viper moving in 5. The first sign of trouble came at the 12-minute mark. Ramsey's voice crackled through the comm tight with controlled urgency. Sarge, I've got movement on the secondary approach. Multiple signatures. They're not supposed to be there. Vance's blood went cold. The intelligence had said the secondary approach was clear. The intelligence had said the only hostiles were concentrated around the primary target. The intelligence was wrong. For one terrible moment, he was back in Syria. Back in the moment when bad intel had killed 3 SEALs. Back in the darkness of his own failure. Then training took over. All elements be advised. We have unconfirmed hostile activity on secondary approach. Viper recommend you abort primary entry and regroup at Rally Point Charlie. Drake's response was immediate. Negative. We're already committed. Can you contain the secondary threat? Vance looked at his men. The old 3rd platoon would have panicked, would have defaulted to aggression, would have made mistakes that got people killed. These weren't those Marines anymore. Ramsey, take your fire team and assess the secondary threat. Sterling, shift your element to provide cover. Hayes, maintain overwatch on primary. Nobody engages without my authorization. Copy that, Sarge. His men moved like water, fluid, adaptable, responding to changing circumstances instead of clinging to plans that no longer applied. On the ridge, Kira tracked the movement through her scope. She could see what Vance couldn't, the full scope of the ambush that was forming. 8 hostiles, maybe 10 setting up positions that would cut off the SEAL extraction route. She keyed her radio. Vance, Ghost Eye, I have eyes on your secondary threat. Count as 8 heavily armed, setting up a textbook L-shaped ambush on Viper's planned extraction route. Can you interdict? Negative. Angles are wrong from my position. If I start shooting, I compromise Viper's approach. But I'm tracking them. If they move, I'll let you know. Ramsey's assessment came through 60 seconds later. Sarge, it's worse than we thought. I count 8 hostiles, maybe 10. They're setting up an ambush position on Viper's extraction route. If the SEALs come out the way they planned, they're walking into a kill zone. The situation crystallized with terrible clarity. The SEALs were committed to their primary mission. The intelligence failure had created a threat they didn't know existed. And 3rd Platoon was the only thing standing between their allies and disaster. It was Syria all over again. Except this time, Vance had a chance to write a different ending. Ramsey, can you guide Viper through your alternative route? Yes, sir, but they'll have to trust me and they'll have to move fast. Vance switched to Drake's frequency. Viper, we've got a problem. Your extraction road is compromised. My man has an alternative, but you'll need to follow his lead. Silence stretched for 3 agonizing seconds. Your man being the private who impressed Commander Wolf? That's the one. Another pause. Then we'll follow his lead. Get us home, Marines. What happened next would be studied at Quantico for years to come. Ramsey guided SEAL Fireteam Viper through terrain that wasn't on any map using an approach that no formal training had ever taught. He anticipated enemy movement, identified cover positions, coordinated with Marine fire teams to create safe corridors through chaos. From her overwatch position, Kira tracked the entire operation. She watched Ramsey work with a precision that reminded her of Isaac. Not the same techniques Ramsey had his own style, but the same understanding that warfare was as much about thinking as fighting. The hostiles realized too late that their ambush had been outmaneuvered. By the time they repositioned, the combined Marine SEAL element was already past the kill zone, moving toward extraction with the high-value target secured. But the enemy wasn't done. At the extraction point, everything went wrong at once. RPG fire erupted from positions they thought were clear. The first round hit 20 meters from the designated LZ, throwing dirt and shrapnel in a lethal cone. The second hit closer. Someone was directing fire, someone good. Vance felt the concussion wave of an explosion that threw him off his feet. His helmet hit the ground hard enough to make his vision blur. He tasted blood and dirt. Around him, Marines were returning fire, covering the SEALs, doing everything they'd trained to do. Then he heard the words that stopped his heart. Man down, Drake's hit. On the ridge, Kira saw it happen through her scope. Drake had been coordinating his team's movement to the LZ when the RPG hit. Shrapnel caught him in the leg, femoral artery based on the blood pattern. She'd seen enough wounds to know 3 minutes, maybe less, before he bled out. The helicopter was still 90 seconds out. The math didn't work. She keyed her radio. Vance, Ghost Eye, Drake's hit bad, femoral artery. You've got 3 minutes. Copy, moving to Peachcom. Negative. Kira was already moving, slinging her rifle across her back. I'm closer, I'm going in. Commander, you're Overwatch. If you leave that position, then Ramsey becomes Overwatch. Ramsey, you're on the rifle. Anyone moves toward that LZ, you drop them. Copy. Ramsey's voice came back steady. Copy, Ghost. I've got Overwatch. Vance, I need a suppression corridor. 30 seconds, then I move. Kira descended from her position at a dead run, 300 meters in 40 seconds, her boots finding purchase on terrain that wanted to kill her. She'd made impossible shots. Now she'd make an impossible run. She dropped beside Drake, her hands already assessing the wound. Femoral artery, she confirmed. The SEAL medic was trying to apply pressure, but the blood was pulsing between his fingers. 3 minutes, maybe less, the medic said. Kira looked at the extraction point. 200 meters. Open ground. Active RPG fire. She'd carried heavier loads longer distances, but never under fire like this. Ramsey, she said into her comm, I need a suppression corridor. Everything you've got. I'm carrying Drake to the LZ. Commander, you're, Vance started, not negotiable. Kira lifted Drake with a fireman's carry that shouldn't have been possible for someone her size. Pure technique. Leverage over strength. This is what we train for, Staff Sergeant. This is what Isaac died for. So no one else has to. She met Vance's eyes across the chaos. Your Marines have been reborn. Now let them prove it. Suppression live in 5, Ramsey's voice crackled. He was on Kira's rifle now, 300 meters away, the world reduced to crosshairs and calculations. 4, 3. Kira ran. The next 47 seconds redefined everything 3rd Platoon thought they knew about warfare. Ramsey's first shot dropped a hostile, setting up another RPG. The second took out a machine gun position that had been tracking Kira's movement. His third, fourth, and fifth created a corridor of suppression that kept enemy heads down long enough. Sterling's fire team erupted with everything they had. Not wild spray-controlled bursts overlapping fields of fire, the kind of coordination that only came from units that had learned to think as one. Hayes called corrections from his position. Ghost shift left 2 meters. RPG team repositioning on your 10 o'clock. Ramsey's rifle cracked. The RPG team died before they could fire. Kira ran through hell with a dying SEAL on her shoulders. Bullets cracked through the air where her head had been milliseconds before. RPG rounds exploded close enough that the concussion threw debris against her body armor. Drake was dead weight bleeding, barely conscious. But behind her, 3rd Platoon was creating a wall of fire that would be analyzed in after-action reports for years. Marines fighting with SEAL precision, adapted tactics Ego abandoned. They'd learned, and because they'd learned, she made it. The helicopter was already spooling up when Kira reached the LZ. SEALs pulled Drake aboard. The medic went to work, hands moving with practiced efficiency. Kira collapsed against the bulkhead, her legs shaking from adrenaline and exertion. Vance climbed in last, dropped beside her. "You could have ordered me to carry him," he said. Kira shook her head. "Some things you can't delegate, some promises you keep yourself." She looked out at the valley below, the same valley where Isaac had died 18 months ago. "This time," she whispered, "this time we all came home." The helicopter banked hard, carrying 44 Americans towards safety. Below, the compound burned, enemies scattered, mission accomplished. But more than that, something had changed in the fundamental nature of how these warriors saw themselves and each other. Marines and SEALs, no longer competing, finally cooperating. The way it should have been from the beginning. Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, Germany. 2 days later. Silas Drake survived. The surgery took 11 hours. The recovery would take months, but he survived. When he woke, Kira was in the chair beside his bed. She'd been there for 6 hours, dozing between nurse visits, refusing to leave until she knew he'd make it. Drake's eyes opened slowly. "You carried me," he said. His voice was rough from the breathing tube. "Under fire. You carried me. You would have done the same." "Maybe." Drake's eyes were wet. "But I didn't have to. You did." He reached out and gripped her hand with surprising strength. "Isaac would be proud of what you did, of what you made those Marines become." Kira's throat tightened. "I didn't make them anything. They did the work themselves. You gave them the chance. That's what Isaac would have done." The door opened. Vance entered, still in his combat uniform, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. "Commander Drake, sir." "Staff Sergeant." Drake's voice was weak but firm. "Your Marines saved my life. Your intel assessment saved all of us." "We learned from the best, sir." "You learned from failure." Drake's gaze was penetrating. "That's harder. Most units don't survive learning those lessons. Yours did." He looked between Kira and Vance. "Isaac Brennan died because a unit failed to verify their intelligence. You both could have let that failure define everything that came after. Instead, you built something better from the wreckage." Drake paused, gathering strength. "Tell Master Sergeant Brennan, tell Hawk that his brother's death wasn't for nothing, that it changed how the Corps and the teams work together. That matters more than any mission's success." Vance's eyes were bright. "Yes, sir, I'll tell him." 1 week later, Camp Lejeune. The memorial ceremony happened on a Sunday. The base had seen hundreds of these over the years. Names added to bronze walls, honors rendered, taps played. But this one was different. This one was about building something instead of just remembering loss. General Stone presided. At 70, he'd outlived too many of the men he'd commanded. But today his face showed something other than grief. Hope. Master Sergeant Hawk Brennan stood beside the memorial wall in dress uniform. At 62, he still looked like he could run 20 miles with a full pack. His campaign ribbons told a story of 3 decades at war. Gulf War, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan. Beside Isaac's name, a new plaque had been mounted. The Brennan Protocol, in memory of Staff Sergeant Isaac Brennan. His death taught us that excellence without humility kills. His legacy taught us that growth without ego saves. Hawk stepped forward. Every eye watched him. 40 Marines, 4 SEALs, officers who'd come from across the country to witness this moment. "My brother used to say that the Corps makes warriors, but compassion makes leaders." Hawk's voice was steady, but Kira could hear the emotion underneath. He believed that failure wasn't an ending. It was a teacher. And the best teachers don't just point out mistakes, they show you how to fix them. He looked at Kira. "Sergeant Wolf came here 18 months ago ready to destroy 3rd Platoon. She had every right, she had the authority, she had the justification." Hawk paused. But she remembered something Isaac taught her when she was 17 years old. That one bad day doesn't define you. What you do next does. He turned to face the assembled Marines. "You did the work. You chose growth over comfort. You chose humility over ego. You became the unit my brother died hoping you could be." Mob Vance stepped forward. "Master Sergeant, on behalf of 3rd Scout Sniper Battalion, we accept this designation with the understanding that it comes with responsibility." The Brennan Protocol will be lived, not just studied. We will verify every piece of intelligence. We will check our egos at the door. We will make Isaac's memory mean something. See that you do, Hawk said, because I'll be watching. General Stone stepped forward with a final announcement. Effective immediately, the Brennan Protocol will be integrated into Basic School Infantry Officer Course and Scout Sniper School. Every Marine will learn verify intel, adapt tactics, check your ego. He looked at Kira. Sergeant Wolf, the Commandant, has requested your presence at Quantico to oversee implementation. You'll be training the trainers. Kira nodded. Yes, sir. There's more. Stone's expression softened. Private First Class Colt Ramsey front and center. Ramsey stepped forward, looking terrified. For actions above and beyond during combat operations in Afghanistan, demonstrating tactical innovation, exceptional marksmanship and leadership under fire, you are hereby promoted to sergeant and assigned to Quantico as assistant instructor for adaptive tactics. Ramsey's eyes went wide. Sir, thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Thank the woman who saw potential in you when everyone else saw a nervous kid. Ramsey looked at Kira. She nodded once. The ceremony concluded, Marines dispersed, but Kira remained at the wall tracing Isaac's name with her fingers. Hawk approached quietly. You gave them what Isaac would have given them, he said, a second chance. No, Hawk shook his head. Something better. You gave them the truth, that they'd failed, that failure had consequences, and that they could choose what came next. He stood beside her two warriors who'd carried too much weight for too long. I'm retiring next month, Hawk said. Full retirement. No more active duty. You've earned it. Maybe, but I'm not done. Thought I'd teach, Quantico, help you with the Brennan Protocol implementation. Kira smiled. I'd like that. They stood in silence for a moment. Isaac would be proud, Hawk said finally, of what you built here, of what you became. I became what he taught me to be. No, you became better because you took the lesson and made it yours. Hawk pulled something from his pocket. A photograph. Black and white edges worn from handling. Two men in desert camouflage, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera despite the exhaustion in their eyes. Kira recognized Isaac immediately. Younger, maybe 28. Before Syria, the other man was Hawk, 30 years younger but with the same steel in his eyes. Mogadishu, 1993, Hawk said. He saved my life that day, carried me half a mile under fire, refused to leave me even when it would have been smarter to save himself. He handed Kira the photograph. I want you to have this. Reminder that the cycle continues. He saved me. You honored his memory by saving others. Now you'll teach the next generation to do the same. Kira took the photograph with trembling hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep teaching, keep building, keep making sure that when good people fail, they get the chance to become better. 3 years later, Quantico, Virginia. Kira stood before a classroom of SEAL candidates, 40 faces, 20-somethings, intense focus, the same hunger she'd seen in the mirror when she was 17. Today we're going to talk about failure, she began. Not how to avoid it, that's impossible. We're going to talk about what you do when failure costs lives. The room was silent. 8 years ago, I made a shot in Afghanistan that saved 8 Army Rangers. That same shot ricocheted and killed an innocent woman. A nurse, 24 years old, volunteering her time to help people in a war zone. She let that sink in. I spent 4 years asking myself if I made the right choice, wondering if 8 lives were worth one, wondering if I could have done it differently. Kira walked to the window looking out at young warriors training on the ranges below. Then someone taught me that the question wasn't, did I make the right choice? The question was, what do I do with the weight of that choice? She turned back to face them. You can let it destroy you. Let guilt and doubt eat away until you can't function. Or you can let it teach you, make you more careful, more thorough, more committed to making sure the next impossible decision comes with every advantage you can give it. The door opened. The door. Hawk entered, civilian clothes, a cane in his hand now, but still carrying himself like the warrior he'd always been. Heard you could use a guest lecturer, he said. Kira smiled. Always room for a legend, Master Sergeant. The class continued. Hawk told stories from Mogadishu, from the Gulf, from 3 decades of warfare that had shaped how America fought. Kira added lessons from Afghanistan, from Syria, from the hard years of learning that excellence and humility weren't opposites. They were partners. After class, they stood together at the outdoor range, watching young SEALs train, watching the future take shape in front of them. Isaac would be proud, Hawk said quietly, of them, of you, of what this became. Think he'd be proud of us giving second chances to people who failed him. Hawk smiled. Isaac was all about second chances. Hell, he gave me one when I almost quit after Mogadishu. Gave you one when you wanted to quit after that interpreter. He'd say that's what warriors do. We catch each other when we fall. They stood in silence, watching the sun set over the ranges. Then let's make sure everyone who needs one gets one, Kira said. That's the legacy worth leaving. Somewhere on a bronze wall at Camp Lejeune, Isaac Brennan's name gleamed in the sunlight. And somewhere else, Garrett Vance was leading 3rd Scout Sniper Battalion through another mission, carrying the lessons learned in blood and humility, and the understanding that excellence without compassion was just violence in uniform. Colt Ramsey taught adaptive tactics to Marines who would carry those lessons to wars not yet imagined. Sterling had completed SEAL selection, his 3rd attempt successful, because he'd finally learned that strength without discipline was weakness in disguise. Silas Drake returned to active duty walking with a limp, but carrying a story of Marines who'd saved his life and changed how the teams in the Corps worked together. The cycle continued. The lessons spread. The transformation never ended. Because true strength wasn't about never falling. It was about rising stronger every single time. It was about catching others when they fell. It was about remembering that warriors were made not in the absence of failure, but in the refusal to let failure have the final word. 3 years after Camp Lejeune, Kira received a letter. Plain envelope, Virginia postmark. Inside a single photograph, the one Hawk had given her, now framed professionally. Attached was a note in Hawk's careful handwriting, Afghanistan, Helmand Province, 2024. Marine SEAL Joint Operation, 0 casualties. Perfect execution. 3rd Battalion leading the way. The cycle continues. He would be so damn proud. Hawk, Kira set the photograph on her desk at Quantico right beside her instructor, credentials, and her rifle qualification certificates. Some lessons she'd learned couldn't be taught in classrooms or training facilities. Some lessons lived in the spaces between moments, in the choice to give second chances instead of first judgments, in the understanding that strength without compassion was just violence in uniform. Isaac Brennan had taught that to Hawk. Hawk had taught it to her. And now she was teaching it to a generation who would carry it forward into wars, not yet fought in places not yet named for reasons they couldn't yet imagine. The photograph remained on her desk for 20 years, a reminder, a promise, a legacy that would outlive them all. And on quiet nights, when the weight of command felt too heavy, Kira would look at that photograph of 2 warriors grinning, despite the exhaustion and the fear and the knowledge that tomorrow might not come. She would remember that Isaac had saved Hawk, that Hawk had saved her, that she had saved 3rd Platoon, and that somewhere right now someone was being saved by the lessons they'd all learned from failure. The cycle never ended. It just kept getting better. One warrior at a time. One second chance at a time. One life saved at a time. That was the legacy. That was the promise. That was what made all the impossible shots, all the 47-second runs, all the weight and grief and loss worth carrying. Because in the end, warriors weren't defined by the battles they won. They were defined by the people they saved and the lessons they left behind.